It's often said that if something seems too good to be true, then it probably is. Certainly when I saw the low price of these forks combined with numerous glowing online reviews, I thought there must be a catch. Maybe I'm just cynical, but in my mind, something couldn't be performing that well at such a low price point without there being some sort of catastrophic hidden flaw. Well, I've been riding the Durolux 38 for 2 months now. I've not found that flaw just yet. Hello, welcome to the video. In this one, I'm going to be giving you my review of the SR Suntour Durolux 38 Evo. The fork I've been riding has 170mm of travel, and I've been running it up front on my Norco Sight. I've wanted to try some suspension products that aren't made by Fox or Rockshox for a little while now, so when this fork popped up on Facebook Marketplace completely unused at a very reasonable price, I leapt at the opportunity. Also, this fork has just been nominated for a Pink Bike Value Product of the Year award, so it seems like a good time to share my experiences given that more people might be considering running one. I've had a fairly mixed history with forks, but the bulk of my riding career has mainly been on products from Fox and Rockshox with a light smattering of Mazzocchi here and there. Really, by riding this fork, I wanted to see if a less respected brand could hold a candle to the big dogs. I'm going to start this review by talking about design and aesthetics before moving on to setup and ride impressions. But before we get into all of that, if you like what we're doing on this channel, please hit that subscribe button. Obviously, no worries if you don't want to, but I would really appreciate it if you did. Also, if you have any questions about this fork or you've ridden one yourself, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear about your experiences. With all that said, let's get into the review. So straight away, I think the Durolux 38 is actually quite a handsome fork. I know that seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but I do care about how my components look, and I think this one looks pretty good. As riders, I think we're pretty used to the aesthetic of Fox and Rockshox products, so to compete with them is always going to be a tricky balancing act. You want your product to look sufficiently different so that it's not lumped in with the big brands, but also you don't want it to look too different or too unusual so that it alienates consumers. I think SR Suntour have done a great job in this regard. It's got nice simple decals with a conventional design. There's nothing too weird going on, and with the chunky 38mm stanchions, it adds up to a fork that I think is quite smart and well executed. Another nice bit of design is the included fender which comes with this fork. It attaches to the back of the lowers with 3 small bolts. For riders in properly sloppy conditions, it isn't likely to offer enough coverage, but if you're blessed with slightly drier riding conditions, you should be alright. I actually had to chop the front half of mine off as it was getting bent with the way I have to store my bike in the van at the moment, but I actually think it looks pretty good with half of it missing. SR Suntour have managed a rare thing with the top caps for compression and air on this fork by making CNC'd aluminium look like cheap plastic. I was genuinely surprised when I touched these for the first time and realised they were in fact made of metal. Admittedly, they do work well though, and if I designed them, they'd probably look even worse. The included through axle with this fork is a little bit weird. It's kind of like the ones Rockshox used to do back in the day with their 20mm axles. It's like a hybrid between a quick release and a through axle. It does work well, I just wish it was a conventional one-piece design. On the back of the lowers we have the quick service ports. I was quite excited about these, as not only do they offer a way to remove excess air pressure from the fork lowers, they also offer a way to add oil to the foam seals without disassembling the fork. In my mind this sounded like I was basically doing a full lower leg service without even having to really touch the fork, but in practice, adding a small amount of oil to some foam seals isn't going to replace a proper service. Topping up the oil from these ports definitely does make a difference, but it doesn't quite transform the fork in the way I was hoping that it might. Despite that, this is a really innovative and consumer-friendly feature that Fox and Rockshox should definitely be paying attention to. Many riders want to work on their own stuff, and SR Suntour are making it a lot easier than most. Another nice touch on the lowers of these forks are the SKS dust seals. These are a lovely green colour and so far have performed flawlessly. I'm riding through summer in New Zealand at the moment, and for maybe the first time in my riding career, my dust seals actually have dust on them rather than just being covered in mud. I'm going to briefly touch on the design of the damper and the air spring now, but I'm not going to go super in depth because realistically I am not the person you should be listening to when it comes to the actual engineering behind suspension components. If you want to properly deep dive into this product, then Otter MTB Tech has done a great video on this exact fork. That being said, the air spring on this fork is actually quite simple. It makes do with a single positive and negative chamber, and it's also self-equalizing. So you simply pump it up to your desired pressure, compress it a few times, and you should be good to go. You can change how progressive the air spring is with volume spacers. On this fork there were 3 supplied from the factory, and they're actually hollow rather than solid like you might find from other suspension brands. So adding or removing them isn't going to make as much of a difference as you might expect. The damper on the Durolux 38 is also pretty simple and no nonsense. It makes do with just 2 external adjustments, these being rebound and low speed compression. It's not a fully sealed unit, but SR Suntour say this is actually a good thing, as the RC Plus damper inside this fork should have increased oil flow compared to some of their fancier dampers. This means it should be able to handle high speed, high force impacts while still staying nice and supple off the top. Before we get on to the setup process of this fork, I just want to applaud SR Suntour for making this product as easy to work on as possible. The fact that you can completely service a damper, including disassembling, bleeding and reassembling, all without the use of specialist tools, is something genuinely remarkable in the current suspension landscape and really makes this fork stand out from products made by Fox and Rockshox. You can't even do a lower leg service on some Fox forks without having 2 different kinds of special oil. SR Suntour are really thinking of the home mechanic with this product, and I for one really appreciate it. In terms of getting this fork set up, I found it very easy to get a good initial base setting, but getting it fully dialed in was a little bit trickier. For air pressure, I started at 70 psi. This was at the upper end of what SR Suntour recommended for my weight, but it felt pretty good for my riding style. SR Suntour don't offer a detailed guide on where to start in terms of rebound and compression on this fork, and in that regard, Fox and Rockshox definitely do come out on top. Being completely in the dark as to what settings would work best for me, I stuck the compression somewhere in the middle, I stuck the rebound towards the quicker end of things, and then set about doing some hack bracketing. This is much like normal suspension bracketing, but with just much less patience. Basically, I tried full compression damping for a bit of the trail, then no compression damping, then some compression damping, and then sort of worked out what felt best from there. I then did the same with rebound and was surprised to learn just how quick the rebound on this fork can go. On the Fox 36 Rhythm I've been running before this fork, I had the rebound set basically as quickly as it could go. On this fork, when I tried the same settings, I could barely hold on to it. So if you're somebody who likes a really fast rebound tune, or maybe you're a little bit lighter, so you require generally a bit faster rebound, this fork should work really well for you. What threw me a bit of a curveball with this fork was spending 3 days riding a Fox 38 factory with the Grip X2 damper. I thought I had the Durolux 38 set up pretty good, but riding that Fox fork showed me how much better things could be. I largely stuck to the factory recommended settings with the Fox fork, and what struck me was how damped and slow that fork felt when I was just sort of rolling around normally. I thought it wouldn't translate well to the trail, but I was quite wrong about that. The Fox 38 felt controlled and supportive in a way that the Durolux 38 simply didn't. I'll do a full comparison of these forks later in the video, but for now, I'll just go through the changes I made to the setup on the Durolux 38 to get it feeling that little bit better. Basically, I whacked up the compression and slowed down the rebound. Previously, I'd been relying on the air spring for support, but I now shifted this to the damper. To go along with this, I reduced the air pressure to 68 psi and removed 2 volume tokens. I didn't slow down the rebound as dramatically, but I did still quieten it down just that little bit. With these new settings, the fork has felt both more controlled and more supportive and has been serving me well ever since. For those who are interested, my exact settings are 68 psi in the air spring with 1 volume token, compression 4 clicks from fully closed, and rebound 7 clicks from fully open. I'm not saying these are the best settings for this fork, it's just what works well for me. Now, with all of that out the way, let's finally get on to some ride impressions. When initially riding the Durolux 38, there wasn't really one characteristic that stood out to me. It just felt like a good, solid fork that was doing its job well. To be honest, I didn't think I'd fully appreciate the extra stiffness that 38mm stanchions can offer, but straight away the increase in precision was actually quite noticeable. In terms of small bumps, the Durolux 38 is actually quite fluttery and genuinely does feel very supple off the top. When things get a bit spicier and the impacts become a bit larger, the fork still stays controlled and composed, but it doesn't fully delete the biggest bumps. When you're just riding around the car park, the fork doesn't feel as buttery smooth as the competitors from Fox and Rockshox, and there's definitely a little bit of stiction going on. Fortunately, when you're actually riding some trails, the fork really comes alive, and that stiction turns into a distant memory. The Durolux 38 is a fork that likes to ride quite high in its travel. While this is something I generally quite enjoy, Because of this trait on this fork, I found it quite hard to find a rebound setting that I was fully happy with. Because the airspring likes to return to a place in its travel that is generally quite high, the fork can feel like a little bit of a handful on repeated bigger impacts. To me, it's a little bit like you're choosing between rebound that can handle singular big impact events but won't handle repeated impacts as well, or you're choosing a rebound that can handle repeated impacts quite well, but is going to require a little bit more strength from the rider to fully make the most of it. If there was separate high speed and low speed rebound adjusters, I think I could get this fork feeling absolutely dialed. Unfortunately for now, the settings that I've landed on feel more like a compromise than a solution. The airspring on this fork is super progressive, and I've still not managed to use those final 5mm of travel, despite me having an absolutely enormous crash where I cased a road gap. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of this crash, but you're just gonna have to take my word for it. I know I could remove a volume spacer to try and resolve this issue, but really, due to their hollow design, I don't think it would make a massive difference. And generally, I'm quite happy with where I'm sort of sitting within the travel on this fork, so I don't really want to mess with it. On the trail, this fork isn't the quietest, and it does make some suspension-y swishing noises, but it never makes any clunks and doesn't have any sort of discernible top out. I know there's a few criticisms from me there, but really, for the price, this fork rides exceptionally well and is certainly a massive improvement from the Fox 36 Rhythm I was running before. In reality though, that isn't really the fairest of comparisons. The Fox 36 Rhythm was a design from many years ago now, and it also makes use of 36mm stanchions rather than 38. What might be a slightly fairer comparison is how does a Durolux 38 compare with a Fox 38? Well, I'll tell you. So I briefly touched on this earlier, but recently I had 3 full days riding a Fox 38 factory with a Grip X2 damper. It is a hell of a fork, and definitely a competitor to the Durolux 38, despite not really occupying the same price bracket. For reference, the Fox 38 factory retails at $1,309 with the Durolux 38 retailing at $850. Obviously there's a massive price gap there, but the difference in performance isn't quite as dramatic as you might expect. The Durolux 38 is slightly lighter than the Fox fork and also doesn't have control over high-speed compression and rebound. Despite that, there's not really any terrain that the Fox fork could ride that the Durolux couldn't. It's just how they execute that terrain that really sets them apart, and more specifically, how they handle repeated bigger impacts. The Fox 38 feels basically impossible to overwhelm. Regardless of what you're throwing at it, the fork is going to gobble it up. The Durolux will happily ride the same terrain, but your arms and hands are going to be noticing it just that little bit more. Composure, control and refinement is what you're paying for with the Fox fork, but only you can decide if that difference in performance is worth the cost. For me, I am more than happy with the Durolux 38, but if somebody wanted to offer me a Fox 38 factory for free, I'm probably not going to say no. And I think that is going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching if you've got this far. If you have any questions about this fork, please leave a comment down below and I will try my best to answer them. Also, if you have any suggestions as to some products that maybe I should do a review on, maybe do a video on, I would love to hear about them. With all that said, thank you for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next one.